haven't heard too much about this, but a few years ago, you may remember in Europe, this was I think 2003, there was a period of a week where they had sustained temperatures of 105. And does this ring bells for people? France and Italy and maybe Spain too. And there's about 40 or 50,000 people who died with sustained heat of 105. Now the deal is, all of these changes that we just talked about have happened with less than 1 degree centigrade warming. It's about 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit if you use our system. All these changes happen with less than 1 degree centigrade. But right now the science is predicting we're going to be at 2, 3, or 4 degrees by 2050. Anybody plan to be here in 2050?
Yep.
Most alive on the planet. On the planet? Anybody? Quite a few of us, I think. So the term 2050 starts to really mean something. They used to say, oh, don't worry, these kinds of serious climate changes are centuries away. Now it's happening in our lifetimes and today. 80% of all the warming has happened in the last 25 years. 80% of the changes that have been spread out over a decade and a half, a century and a half, have happened in just the last couple decades. So it is accelerating, and that means we gotta, we really need to take the bull by the horns and fix this now. And the other point here was that 105 degrees is what we would see in our old climate. But in a world that warms 2 or 3 or 4 degrees, your heat wave is not going to be 105 degrees. The heat wave is going to be more like 117 and 120 degrees. So, you know what happens then? Your air conditioner and your electricity and all that goes. And when it goes, and it's humid, there's really nothing you can do, because the water is hot at that point. I guess here you have the ocean, and you could cool down, so it would be everybody into the ocean, But, what's that?
I think we'll be underwater here.
You'll be underwater, exactly, right. And that is a very important point. Next slide, in fact, we just talked about that. Oh, the other piece is that once you get to 4 degrees warming, which some very reputable agencies are now predicting by 2050. Once you get to 4 degrees warming, your agricultural productivity goes down about by half. So all kinds of things. You don't want to go there. Here's the other thing that happens. So this is what the Arctic looked like in 1979. This was 2007, so you can see a lot of white here, and it's half gone in 2007, and now people are predicting maybe in the next decade. Used to say by 2030, all right, but people are now saying quite likely within the next 10 years, it'll be gone. And that in turn accelerates everything else. Because once you have this patch of blue, if it's white, it reflects heat. But if it's blue, it absorbs heat. So once we're in the process of losing this reflector right now, which is just going to accelerate the warming. So all of this is why we need a Green New Deal right now. I'll come to that in a second. And this is one other thing about the ice. What is the elevation here? 0, 7, 10, all right, well, Greenland alone contains 20 feet of sea level. And Greenland has accelerated, the melting of Greenland has accelerated 5-fold, that is by 500%, in the last decade. People used to say, oh, don't worry, it's not going to break up for at least, 1,000 years. Now people are saying, well, we don't know, we don't have a clue how these things go. And Jim Hansen, the foremost climatologist, is saying it could happen over a couple of years, not meaning in a few years, but we could get to that tipping point where it just breaks up, where your ice cube just dissolves. And it's not like a slow melt anymore. It's like a huge flood, 20 feet over a couple of years. So it doesn't give you a lot of time to acclimate. This is why, we absolutely cannot wait to call this an emergency. And it just goes on from Greenland. Greenland is 24 feet. The South Pole, down at the bottom there, that has more ice than anything. At the top, the North Pole, that ice is already in the water. So when it melts, it really doesn't raise the water level at all. So that's not a worry with the current Arctic. But for Greenland and for the Antarctic down below, that ice is all sitting on rock. So when it melts, it's water going into the bathtub. And that bathtub is going to come out. West Antarctic is 19 feet, and the East Antarctic is 170 feet. So this is not what a livable future looks like. This is Boston, just to give you an example. And that's with 20 feet. We just lose a whole lot of our densely populated urban areas, and this is at 40 feet and so on. So this is kind of what's going on here. This is 400,000 years ago, and this is coming up in time to now. And these are kind of the ice ages here. This represents how much carbon dioxide is in the air. Typically, it has cycled over a period of 100,000 years or so, is usually what these changes have taken place on, very slowly. So when it goes up here, that is the melting of the ice age. When it went down here, that was the ice age, just because ice and carbon dioxide are correlated. But this is what happened starting about 100 years ago. Boom. And you can see this is like nothing that has come before. This is an absolute abomination of nature. All of a sudden, the carbon level, the carbon CO2 level has gone just absolutely hog wild. So, what are they doing about it? Well, Obama says, yeah, exactly, he's doing all the wrong things. Fracking, drilling, you name it. The Arctic, pipelines, Keystone, free trade, and I might add GMOs and industrial agriculture are a big part of this too, because they cause deforestation in order to, plant some more GMOs, including the ethanol, and that is a big contributor to climate change. And Obama, of course, is leading us in the wrong direction, bragging about how he's increased oil production to the highest level in 16 years, built enough pipeline to circle the globe. He loves pipelines. This is what tar sands looks like. This is the forest before. This is the area that's been basically devastated by the mining of tar sands. That's in Canada. And you probably know that tar sands is it puts out more CO2. They have to put all kinds of toxic chemicals into it in order to retreat it and then to pump it through the pipelines. And they have to keep it hot. All those things are tailor-made for pipeline ruptures. If you are pumping the oil at high pressure and it's heated and it's full of corrosive chemicals, what are you going to get? You're going to rupture your pipeline. And that's what their track record is. Lots of ruptures. And, we saw this a couple weeks ago in Alabama, I think it was. And, this is what we can expect. Where was it?
Arkansas.
Arkansas, thank you. And this is why our water supplies are very much at risk from this stuff. So the tar sand has to be stopped. And when tens of thousands of us, probably 50,000, went to the White House to tell the president to stand up to big oil, the president was golfing with big oil in the form of this guy, Jim Crane, who's a big investor in fossil fuels, and that's his golfing resort down here in Florida somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where, but this is, where 1% goes, and Obama got out of town. He just hightailed it out of town when 50 people came in to say you gotta stand up to the pipeline. He went to play golf with the pipeline. So some of us weren't too surprised. Was anybody there? Was anybody in DC? I know it's a long way to go from here, but it was wonderful. And this is what fracking pads look like. I guess that's one thing you don't have to worry about in Florida.
Oh, no, they're fracking.
You do? Is it going on now?
They want to.
They're trying, okay, all right, great. Well, then I will say a few words about fracking. Yeah, this is just more absolute suicide, devastates our water supplies, our roads, uses up huge amounts of water at a time when we have water shortages to start with. And it's very toxic to the nearby communities. The gases, the toxic stuff that's used to dissolve the rock is, it comes back out. What goes in goes out, and it goes into the air supply, and these wells are put, when they come in, they go all over the community. They're put in playgrounds, in people's backyards. They're virtually everywhere, and they totally industrialize the landscape. So, finally, why do we have to stop GMOs? As you probably know, this is crazy on many levels. It